Still some there. Okay, so I'd like to call a meeting to order. And financial report, please.
All right, our cash position as of the end of last week is $21,374.64.
Thank you. Okay, is there any new business? Any old business? Okay, so the meeting is adjourned. And Chuck Kuchar, do you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah. One. We think it's working. Oh boy, it's going to be a fun night. We are so happy to see all of you here, and I know this is a topic that we thought would attract a number of people because for many obvious reasons, you're related, that was your name, you know about the family, you know something about the history. And so we will have a kind of a messenger with the microphone because we're really expecting, Sandy's got a lot of things to tell you about the Rowleys family, but we also want to hear what you have to say. And many of you will have some stories and something that should be recorded. And I think we have a sign-up sheet for the DVDs on the table. So if you'd like, I can see me making a lot of work for myself here, but if you'd like a copy of the DVD, $5?
Yes. Yes, sir.
I don't handle the money. Sandy can take it or Vaughn can take it. But I think it is something, the kind of event that doesn't happen maybe a lot. And here in Fabius, we want to make it happen maybe more than we have in the past, and that's the kind of thing. And it is important what you tell us, the records you have, pictures you have, things like that that we can use and put up on the screen so that everybody can see them. Well, programs coming. Sandy's been working hard. I think Linda's been working on this. We have programs lined up for almost all of 2018. What do we have, Sandy? About two openings?
About 3 openings. Right?
3 openings. So, you have ideas about programs, talk to one of us about that, and we'll see. Coming up next month, instead of having a 7 o'clock meeting, it's going to be 6, and the reason is this is our holiday, Christmas sort of holiday business meeting, and you bring something to pass, a dish to pass. We have a meal together at 6 o'clock, and then we're going to be entertained. Is it by the McCarthy family? The McCarthy family is going to entertain us. We may conduct a little business. You know, it could happen. So we'll see. But a number of things coming up then. And then as we get into January, we typically shift over to Saturday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon for the winter months, in case you have trouble getting here or you like to drive in the light. And I'm giving myself a little promotion here. In January, I will be talking about UFOs, unidentified flying objects, the possibility that aliens have come here, and it is a strange story, and not just about the aliens, the way the United States government responded to all of this and what they did. So it's going to be fun. We'll do that on January, and many, many good things coming up in the new year. So just stay with us. So tonight we have our president and Sandy, who's been working on this. I think Linda's been doing something on this. And obviously, you know the name Rowley. You know where the Rowley-Jerome Road is. You maybe didn't know how many Rowleys there were around, and Sandy's going to tell you that. So Sandy, I turn the meeting to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the inspiration for this program came from Nancy Lorraine Hoffman. She said she'd be here tonight, so she'll probably be walking in a little late, because she called me yesterday and said she'd be here. Primary enrollment book from 1918, and the Rural Directory of Onondaga County, which was published in 1917. And I have those books just, set out here so that you can take a look at them. Be careful, because they were my father's and they're old. Okay. So I had 4 maps, and 2 were actually copied. I wanted to show you where the Rowleys lived back in these years. This one is 1874. It just shows only the Rowleys. Now, there's the township of Fabius, the village, excuse me, and then you head out on Route 80. Here's the Rowley-Jerome Road, and you come down here, and this comes into Shackham Road. So as you can see, by 1874, the number of Rowleys, because that's what I had put on here. And there were quite a few Rowleys. Just a few when they started out, but they expanded. And this is the 1889 map, and you can see that they are increasing even more so. You know, they had large families, they had farms and everything. Okay, so I'm going to start talking about Daniel Rowley. And I put up there a little guideline for what I'm going to be reading. So Daniel was born in 1763. The first Rowley to come to Fabius was Daniel Rowley. He was born in Armenia, New York. His ancestors had come from England. He was the 6th Daniel in the Rowley family. He was blinded by smallpox at the age of 10, but that didn't stop him from being ambitious. His sight may have been limited, but not completely gone, not from what I could, surmise from everything I read. Daniel served in the Revolutionary War from May 25th, 1775 to October 2nd of that same year. He served in Captain Hezekiah Baldwin's company in the 2nd Regiment of the New York Forces under the command of Colonel Goose Van Schaaf. He would only have been 12 years old. When Daniel grew up, he married Sarah Beckwith in 1796. They had 7 boys and 1 girl, but there might have been another girl, depends on what genealogies you do read. One boy was named Daniel to follow the tradition. Daniel was quite a businessman. He was a peddler of shoes, harnesses, saddles, and other leather goods. He would make trips from Albany to central New York, exchanging his leather goods for livestock, which he drove back to Albany. His sons made the trips with him and supplied the eyesight for their father. In the year 1818, blind Daniel and his wife Sarah moved to the Fabius area with some of their children. Now this is 1818 when they first came. By this time, some of the other older children, were adults and didn't live with their parents anymore. Daniel had bought a tract of land southwest of the village of Fabius at Cleveland Corners, near the area now known as Shackham. Shackham received its name from the fact that 200 or more acres in that area had never been deeded to anyone. There were at least 30 squatters who had taken possession of the land and built crude shacks there. Daniel Rowley's tract of land included this settlement. He didn't want trouble with the squatters, so he sold his title to this portion of his estate to them at a small price. Daniel and his sons made a living by trading, breeding, and breaking oxen to yoke. Daniel also preached at the Free Will Baptist Church. The church was built in 1830 on Hemlock Knoll, just west of the crossroads known as Cleveland Corners. Now, from what I can figure out, looking at an old map, there was a Mr. Cleveland who lived on the corner of Route 80 and the Raleigh-Jerome Road, which is near the area where Harvey's Field is now. It's right in that corner. They must have called that the Cleveland Corners. And so the Hemlock Knoll must have been right there at the rise of Route 80 and where the road is Bailey Road and goes down. That's my guess. This would be in an area of Route 80 and Bailey Road. It was later moved, that church was later moved into the village and became the Grange Hall. And that's basically this building. Blind Daniel died in 1849 at the age of 85. He was buried in the Apulia Cemetery. This is a picture of the remains of an old cow barn in Shackham across the road from where Daniel's family lived. And Linda Myers and I were up there walking around and saw that. So that's all that we can find that's left of that old cow barn. Okay, does anybody want to talk about the beginnings of the Daniel family? Okay, you raise your hand if you want to talk.
I'm going to come up and put my paper down so I don't shake.
This is Kay Glasgow, and her mother was a Rowley. And she's my cousin.
And anybody know what this is? It's good I'm here. That is Mullen. And
Can you hear her?
No.
Okay, yes. Have it closer to your mouth.
okay. Better. Back in the days of the Cape Kaiser Fraser and Nash Rambler Sunday drives to visit relatives, took us past a roadside cemetery in Apulia. Once the car was beyond the Berwyn Road, the object of the sibling game was to shout out, "Grandpa Rowley's great-grandfather's grave." And I think I had the Berwyn Road, I think I saw it today. This story is as much about the noxious weed Mullen as it is about blind Daniel. Mullen has endless nicknames: blanket weed, torch plant, Aaron's rod, donkey ears, poor man's flannel, Quaker's rouge. Mullen seeds made their way to colonial America in tons of rock and soil used as ballast in ships. It'd be dumped and then to make room for cargo on the return trip. A single mullen plant can produce 200,000 seeds in a season. Seed simply falls by the parent. Seeds long-lived. Fields severely grazed, depleted, or burned produce robust, thick colonies. Hundreds of years later, livestock avoid eating mullen. Grasshoppers shun it. Early European colonists knew that if you crushed the seeds, the chemical released in it would dope fish and you could catch fish easily. Many immigrants had likely stashed mullen seed into their pockets before leaving home for that first fish dinner. Mullen made its rampant spread through 1700s, much like the Rowley line. From Henry Moses, 1, 2, 3, to the Daniel born 1720, who in his adult life, as a frontier farmer and land investor, fathered 13 children in over 65 years of married life in a succession of 3 wives. With second wife Jemima Parsons, this Daniel fathered a first son born 1763 named Daniel. From around age 10 or after, young Daniel became blind Daniel. A first son learns a lot from his father, even before the age of 10. A blind son needs to be particularly clever. He grew up, married, Sandy mentioned he married Sarah Beckwith, and within 17 years he produced 9 children, 9 or 8. I think there's somebody that thinks there's a daughter, Sarah, and a daughter, Fanny. I don't know. Albeit the same. 7 sons to carry the Rowley name. The first son named Daniel. Blind Daniel sold horses and leather goods just like his dad. And the way I heard it told by my mother, Ruth Rowley Glasgow, a great-great-granddaughter, when Blind Daniel was out with his horse and buggy viewing prospective farmland, he'd explain, "My horse is only calm if he's tied up to a mullein stalk. Otherwise, he'll run off. It's got to be mullein for the hitching post. Nothing else will keep him still." If the seller explained that there's plenty of mullein around to tie a horse to, Blind Daniel looked no further. The land simply wouldn't be worthy of purchase. Then Blind Daniel would have his son Daniel, Charles, Levy, Seth, Samuel, Howard, or Newell. But I know how much my mom loved driving. Maybe the girl or girls were also out in the buggy too. The chain of Daniels broke with my grandfather, Daniel Jason. He was an only son and a toddler when his father, Daniel T. Jr., died. Of his 4 older sisters, Anna, Alice, Jenny, and Mary, only one, Anna, would be married with children. You know that. Daniel Jason's only son, named George Daniel, died an infant in the Great Flu Epidemic, fall 1918. The generational pattern of Daniel Rowleys blanketing the countryside like pilgrim flannel ended. But the story of Blind Daniel and the mullein stalk lives on. Next year, this will grow to be about 6 to 8 feet tall.
6 to 8 feet tall? Wow.
So you could get your horse and know that ain't going to buy that land, not where mulleins grow. Okay? So
Now, Kay, do you keep those down in your area, or are you going to spread that up in this area?
you got it. Sure. I picked this off our retaining wall yesterday. So that it's, what is it, biennial? So that this is it now, and next year it'll be, well, it won't do this.
Okay, so it's biennial, so it only lives for 2 years.
Yeah, it does this the first year and this the second.
Okay.
Okay?
Kind of reminds me of lamb's wool or something like that out there.
It also has somebody's toilet paper name.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, thank you, Kay.
And the Quaker, I think it's an astringent and made your cheeks rosy. It's called Quaker's Rouge. But I'm not
Quaker's
trying.
Rouge. Well, my goodness. Okay.
Sandy, could I just add one thing?
Sure. Hold it right up to your mouth.
I'm also a cousin. I guess we all are. How many people have Rowley are related? Rowley?
Might be.
Okay. Daniel and Sarah were buried in the Apulia station, Apulia's cemetery. And when Vern Rowley and I tried to find the gravesite, probably in the 80s or 90s, 19 that is, we couldn't find it. There are many, many Rowleys there, but not the original Daniel. Okay. Excuse me.
That's okay.
And by the way, my father always pronounced it Daniel. So Vern and I went on a campaign and we raised money for a new gravestone. So if you should go into the Apulia Cemetery, which is an abandoned cemetery now, but maintained by the town of Fabius, and thank you very much to the town, you'll see a lot of Rowleys that are children, grandchildren, and so forth. And there's a monument, a stone to Daniel and Sarah Beckwith. And there is a photograph in one of the, over there, scrapbook, that you can see what it looks like. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now the next slide here shows the children of blind Daniel. So you can see Daniel number 7 was born in 1797. He owned a farm in Fabius, later joined Levi, his brother, in Truxton. Charles was born in 1800, but he died at the age of 24. Levi was a farmer in Truxton, like I said, later joined by his brother Daniel. Seth farmed it in Fabius from 1818 to 1844. Samuel was known as Deacon. He farmed 118 acres through 1880, but he died in his wagon from apoplexy. Which, does anybody know what apoplexy is? The blood vessel broke in his brain. Wow. Don't have any information on Howard H. or Sally. And then there was Newell. And in 1868, he owned 750 acres on lot number 44. He had 75 to 200 cows, and he had been elected township supervisor at one time. So I don't know where these different lots are, but you know, you can probably look them up on the map sometime. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about Newell Rowley. Newell arrived with his father, blind Daniel, in 1818 at the age of 4. In the records, he is listed as a principal farmer in the town of Fabius in 1868, owning 750 acres on lot number 44. He was a sizable dairy farmer with 75 to 200 acres. The property is the current home of Nancy Lorraine Hoffman on Bailey Road, so now we know where lot number 44 is. The stone house was built between 1830 to 1832 and was the home of author Stillman Doubleday. This picture was taken in 1967. In 1877, Newell was elected the Fabius Township Supervisor, and Royce Root, Velda's husband, remembers living there with his parents while they worked the farm on shares. At that time, it was owned by Edward Rowley. Okay. Orson Rowley. Orson was the grandson of blind Daniel and the son of Samuel. Orson was a Civil War veteran. He was 21 years old when he enlisted in 1861. He served in the G Company 61st Infantry in New York. He was wounded 3 times and then discharged in 1865. In 1917, Orson and his wife Cornelia were listed as farmers on rural Route 1 in Fabius. On the 1889 map, it shows that an O. Rowley and an O.S. Rowley lived on Swift Road, just north of Denison Road. In 1930, he was listed as the oldest man in Fabius at the age of 88. In 1917, Orson's son, Giles O. Rowley, was listed as a farmer in Fabius. So here we have a whole lot of Rowleys. Anybody want to say anything? Okay. Okay.
You knew I was going to say something.
Of course, Courtney. Okay, there's the mic right beside you. And Courtney Tucker would like to say something.
I'm the Civil War guy, and I researched the Rowley family. There were 2 Rowley relatives in the Civil War, Orson and his cousin Cassius. Both of them had very significant service in the Civil War. Orson is perhaps, well, you'll understand in a second. He's certainly one of the most impressive people.
We can't hear you back here.
The idea of somebody not being able to hear me anywhere, I reject. Right now, my wife is recording me. And she lives on top of Vesper Hill in Tully. I will step closer. Can you hear me now? I'm not going to sell you a variety. I'll make this relatively short. Orson was in the Peninsula campaign down near Richmond, the so-called 7 days battle where they fought 7 days in 7 different battles that are very significant. His cousin Cassius was in it as well. Orson then proceeded to find a way to get sick down in the Virginia Peninsula, which a lot of farmers from upstate New York did, because they couldn't handle all the things that come out of the swamps and the ground and everything that lives down in Virginia. I lived 30 years in Virginia, so I know what I'm talking about. But the most significant thing about him is that he was able to go to the hospital and come out in time to go with the 61st New York to the Battle of Chancellorsville, which I think most people have heard about. The Battle of Chancellorsville. It's the famous thing where Stonewall Jackson did the flank attack and surprised the Yankees, and everybody ran, and it was a tremendous battle. At one point during the battle, for 1 hour, there was 1 man killed or wounded every second for 1 hour on May the 3rd, 1863. This was a very serious battle. But he managed to survive that and show up in Gettysburg with the 61st New York. He missed Antietam, which was in 1862, where the 61st Regiment had only about 100 riflemen by that time. These regiments started with 700 or 800 guys and then devolved down to about 100 as they got killed and wounded and got sick. So there was about 100 privates at the Battle of Antietam, and the 61st got cut to ribbons. It was really hurt. So it took a year for them to get back up to full strength, went into Chancellorsville, survived that, and then in July the 2nd, they arrived at Gettysburg. In Gettysburg, they marched into the wheat field in Gettysburg. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the wheat field in Gettysburg, but it's one of the iconic battlefield sites in the United States. There's only one cornfield, and that's the one at Antietam. There's only one wheat field that anybody talks about, and that's the one at Gettysburg. 105 riflemen walked into that battle. 35 walked out. Orson Rowley was one of them. All the rest were killed or wounded. Orson managed to survive that and go down into an innocuous battle named Deep Bottom in 1864, where he was severely wounded with a bullet that went through his thigh, came out the other side and managed to miss the other side, and that took him out of the war, and he stopped after that. There was another fellow named Cameron, Ed Cameron. Ed Cameron family here. There's another fellow named Ed Cameron that was also in the 61st that fought at Gettysburg. Now, what I'm trying to get across to you is that you people that are Rowleys and you people from Fabius should be very, very proud of the fact that in your cemetery, in Fabius Cemetery, there are 2 men who fought in the wheat field, in the Battle of Gettysburg, and survived. And there were 2 Rowleys that are buried in that cemetery also. So anybody that's a Rowley that held their hand up over here, you can get my email address. And if there's any Rowleys that want to know anything about any of the Civil War soldiers, these 2 particularly that fought in the Civil War, I'll be more than happy to send you pretty much everything I have. I have their military records for Cassius and for Orson, and I have the medical records and pension records for Orson Rowley. So congratulations to Fabius for having 2 men that fought in the wheat field at Gettysburg, and both of them, 2 out of 35, walked out that day.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now, do I pronounce this Cassius or Cassius? Cassius? Okay, Fabius Rowley. He was the 4th child of Newell Rowley. In 1861, he enlisted as a private in the 61 New York Infantry, Company G. He fought over 20 battles. The last battle he fought was the battle at Snickers Ford, Virginia, on November 6, 1862. He was discharged with a disability for being wounded and held as a prisoner of the war. The only Civil War military funeral held at Fabius was that of Cassius Rowley, one of the first to enlist. Every resident of the town attended the funeral, and a band headed the cortege, a ceremonial procession. Any comments? Okay. Now, I don't know if anybody recognizes this house. It's at 1401 Raleigh-Jerome Road. This is the current home of Mike and Jennifer Wilcox. This is where Mike Wilcox grew up, and Darla Mawson, too. Okay, this house is the first frame house in Fabius. It was built by Josiah Moore shortly after 1794. And Josiah Moore and Timothy Jerome were the first two who came to the Fabius area. This house belonged to Anson Rowley, who was born in 1840, grandson to Blind Daniel. Anson's son, Bernard, was born in 1884 in Fabius. When Bernard grew up, he married Grace Ellis, and he had one child. Bernard took over the farm from his father to be a dairy farmer until 1926. He moved to Apelia Station and leased the farm to his cousin, H. Dwayne Skeel, who later bought it. Bernard also was a member of the Board of Assessors of the town of Fabius, supervisor of Fabius from 1933 to 1945, and treasurer of the Apelia Methodist Church. During his term of office as supervisor, he was faced with many difficult problems owing to the Depression years. He accomplished a great deal for the community in settling problems relating to welfare and relief programs. He was living on South Street in Apelia Station in 1964 when he died at the age of 80. Now, do you recognize the house? Okay. Any comments?
Oh, I live in the house on South Street.
You what?
I live on in the house on South Street. We
Oh,
bought it
okay.
in 1980, yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, I haven't seen that.
Okay. Now, anybody recognize this house on the Raleigh-Jerome Road? And this is the current resident, right here. All right. Hiram was a grandson of Blind Daniel, born in 1838 in Fabius. As a young man, he was in the dairy business in Truxton, New York. In the 1870s, he returned to Fabius, where he farmed. He is listed on the 1874 map. About 1925, H. Dwayne Skeel bought the farm. There was a cow barn across the road from the house. In 1933, Mr. Skeel built a new large barn behind the house. Now, Kay, your mom was born in this house. 1914, Kay's mom was born in this house. Anybody want to say anything? Okay. Buyer Rowley was a cousin to Bernard Rowley. Buyer and his wife Myrtle in 1917 had a farm in Shackham, which was called the Maple Spring Farm. It later became a sawmill. Buyer and Myrtle moved with their 5 school-aged children to Estey Road, which is near Pompey Center Road. Buyer was working on a job with the Onondaga County Highway Department in July 20th, 1935. The crew was working on Eager Road, south of Jamesville, when a thunderstorm arrived. Buyer stood under a tree for protection against the rain, leaning on a steel-pointed shovel when he was struck and killed by lightning. He was 56 years old. And his daughter, one of his daughters, is Emily Estey, who has written a number of books, and we had a program on Emily Estey probably, 3 years ago or so. All right, so I didn't get too much information on these people, but I just thought I'd put them in. Franklin Benjamin Rowley. Franklin's father was Samuel, and his grandfather was Blind Daniel. Between 1870 and 1900, Franklin farmed lot number 22 in Fabius. In 1917, Franklin and his wife Lydia were listed as farmers on Pompey Street in Fabius, and we know Pompey Street is Route 91 now. Anna Rowley. Anna was a granddaughter of blind Daniel. She married Irving Duane Skeel, and they were parents of Herbert Duane Skeel. And Maud Rowley. Maud was a great-granddaughter of blind Daniel. She married Walter Knapp. They were farmers on rural Route 2 in Fabius, which is Route 91. Anybody want to say anything? Okay. Edward Rowley. Edward was a great-grandson of blind Daniel. He was born in the house east of the former Baptist church, which we know today as the Fabius Christian Church. When he was very young, the family moved to the farm of his grandfather, Newell Rowley, which was on Bailey Road. About 1901, Edward Rowley moved to the village and was one of the group of men who contributed much to the business enterprises of the community. He bought the canning factory in 1916 and operated it until 1824. Following the death of his mother in 1913, Edward bought the family home on Academy Street, where Judy Terrence lives now. When the Central School was built in 1930, Edward was appointed Clerk of Works by the architect Earl Hollenbeck. Then Edward was the clerk of the Board of Education. He also served several terms as village president. Edward continued to supervise the farm until his death in 1946, and the farm remained in the family until 1956. Anyone want to talk? Okay, the microphone's coming.
I just wanted to say that he's the first fire chief.
First fire chief?
First fire chief.
Oh. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Sandy, I think that is Judy right close by? I don't know where she was sitting. Judy, stand up for just a second so people recognize who this is Judy's home today, and she has worked diligently to preserve and restore the home that you see on the screen. And she has been gracious enough to bring several pictures and photos and albums that we certainly want you to take a look at. And I want you to spend a little time just visiting with Judy so that you know that, the amazing work that she has done and has cared for this home where Rena lived. She was 100, did she? 100, right? 10.
101.
101? Okay, I'm not gonna, I remember us doing
This
it.
lady is a granddaughter of Rena Rowley, and this is a great-granddaughter.
Oh, that's
Patty
amazing.
Anderson, Jody Hills.
Stand up so we can see that. That is absolutely amazing. Thank you both for being here. We remember, I remember Rena very, very well. And this is just a testament to seeing this home being restored by Judy. So, are there any pieces of memorabilia that you want to speak about, Judy, that you might have?
I just wish that I had known Rena Rowley. She must have been a really remarkable lady. I heard stories about how she drove into her 90s and she would just pull out of the driveway and not bother to look and see if anybody was coming. But she must have been a remarkable lady. I realized that she lived there by herself for 30 years until she died, after her husband died.
Absolutely, she was a remarkable lady. And on her 100th birthday, I think the town
We went over
came out.
We went over and played.
The junior high band walked over from school and they played Happy Birthday to her. And it was very special. She also was, she and her husband had a camp on DeRuyter Lake. And my parents bought that camp and later sold it.
That's great.
And so now it goes on and on.
Okay. Nancy Lorraine, when did you want to speak? At the end, or did you want to speak whenever?
Whenever. I'll wait till the end. I don't judge how much I can add, Sandy. You've got it all.
Well, I don't know about that. Okay. So here's an old picture of the Fabius Canning Factory. In 1900, the Fabius Canning Factory was incorporated with a capital stock of $9,000. The canning factory was a market for peas and corn raised by farmers in the vicinity. It passed from the hands of the local corporation to Mr. J.P. Dorrance, who later sold it to Mr. Edward Rowley. Rowley peas gained a wide reputation for excellence. Beans were also canned, as well as a few other products. The business prospered for a number of years, but closed about 1924. Okay.
Sandy, and for that, I think there are several labels that people will see that are framed, some that Judy Terrence brought, and there's an original stencil that is very unusual from the canning factory. And Peter Schlick has put together some other framed canning labels, and we as a society have worked hard at trying to collect each one of those labels. Our problem is that we don't really know the amount of vegetables and perhaps if there were other fruits. We're not aware of what they all were, and we can't seem to find any history of each kind of vegetable and how many labels were made and how many were sent out. So we're still kind of in a researching mode. So if anyone knows any of that information, please speak to us afterwards, because we're trying hard to make that one whole composite if we possibly can.
Okay. Here are just some more tidbits. They had famous cousins. I know this is hard to read, but they were related to Ulysses S. Grant and to Sir Winston Churchill also. Okay, in the farm journal that I have in my house, I found this listing of the farmers, the Rowley farmers in the Fabius area. And you can see where Anson Rowley, married to Hattie, had one child. He was a farmer. The O means that he owned it. It's not a zero, but that means he owned it. 200 acres, 5 horses, 40 cows in Fabius. And I don't know what the 35 means, probably the township. So you can look at the different ones and how they were listed back then. And I've got that booklet is on the table over there. And then there's a primary enrollment book that I found when my father died. And I looked in the town of Fabius, and I thought this was kind of interesting, how most of them were Republicans. That kind of surprised me. Okay. So, Nancy Lorraine, would you like to speak?
Well, I missed the most important part that would give me a... Hi, everybody. That was wonderful, Sandy. What a lot of research. And welcome all of the Rowleys. I suggested it because I'd run into people so many times who said, oh, you're in the old Rowley farm. And for the last 30 years, I kind of felt like I was living with a lot of history. A lot of questions that I still have, and maybe we can fill in some of those pieces. I understand that the house was originally built in 1802 or 1800 or before. Were you able to narrow that down a little bit? And there's another issue about whether the Doubledays were involved. Is anybody here related to the Doubledays, and did you touch on that, Sandy?
Yes, I did.
Okay. A Samuel Doubleday drove up from Philadelphia one time and gave us a couple of pictures in the late 80s that he had, and they're maybe somebody else might have brought them. I didn't have a chance to get over to the house before I came in this evening, but I've got a couple of pictures that he gave us from 1902, I believe they were, and they labeled Doubleday's Corners, and he said that his family lived in that house at one time, lived in the old farm. And I don't know how many people had that information, or whether that's accurate, or whether there was another farm at the corner.
So it was built between 1830 and 1832.
Okay. All right. So there must have been another house at that location before then. And the barn, there was a picture of the original barn, which was the same size. It was a good-sized barn for those days. And then the barn that stands there now was built by Dwayne Steele's father. And I think that was in 1902. But they didn't, the first barn didn't burn. I'm told that the first barn was torn down just because it wasn't big enough. They needed a taller barn for all of the hay. So it was considered a very fancy barn at the time that it was built. Everybody connected with the Steele family is proud of that. And one of the other details that I have never been able to nail down is how many acres the original parcel was, but at the time the canning factory was in operation, it was considered one of the largest agricultural operations in this part of the state because there were many thousands of acres that were either under control or owned by the Rowley family that operated the canning factory. And it would be nice to kind of document that, like Sandy said, how many vegetables, and we've all seen the labels, and they're beautiful collectibles, and they get a pretty good price on eBay. Somehow somebody saved a lot of those labels. If there's a collector here, they could explain better than I can about how labels survived, but because they were just beautiful ink and they were preserved easily, they're flat, easy to store. There were probably many thousand labels, but it's difficult to know how many there were. And you've all seen the pictures of the Indian. That is not an Onondaga Indian, but they called them Ogna vegetables, a bastardization of the name Onondaga. If anybody here wants to elaborate on that from a Native American perspective, I'm sure we'd be here for a while. But I would love to find out more about the size of the acreage, the number of families that were involved, and how they actually operated their internal business. Was it a family-owned corporation? There really isn't that much that survived about the actual canning factory, but it must have been a pretty impressive family that originally started it. And one nice thing about Byron Rowley, I hope there's a picture of him up here. I just have a special fondness for him, even though he wasn't at the stone house that I live in. He was around the corner on Shackham. There is a famous picture of him with a team of oxen, which I'm kind of fond of because I had 3 teams of oxen on that farm, and they worked hard, and I just always kind of felt like there were farmers that had been there before that were encouraging me to do that.
Program is over, and oh no, you're
hold on just a minute, Sandy, because I just want to make a notation about the maple syrup cans that you'll see here. I'm not sure exactly dates that this happened, but Sandy used the name Barnard Rowley, and we always called him Bernard Rowley. So B.A. Rowley and H.D. Steele had a large sap business, and we happened to find some labels. And so if anyone knows any further information about any of the maple syrup business, we're looking to document that as well.
There was a sugar house on the home farm. It fell down just before the early 80s, mid-80s when I bought it. And there also was an ice house, I don't know. And the ice house is still standing on the farm. I'm not making ice, but there were some ponds up in the hills going up into Morgan. And you can see the remains of one of the ponds now. And the ice house is really a beautiful structure if anybody wants to see it. I've had people come various times to come take a look at it. I'd be glad to show it to you. It's a double wall construction that was filled with sawdust with 2 doors so they could take the ice out from the very top and then work their way down as the season went on.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We are trying to do a little history of the individual families that lived in Nancy Lorraine's home. We know that the Brooks lived there. Our understanding is that the Roy Smith family lived there at one time. Charlie Tonight, Ed Rowley, the Fullers, that would be Fred and Agnes Fuller and their family. And if anyone else is
Lynn Foster, Eunice, and Leonard Foster, when they were first married, they were put for tonight, so tonight's.
okay, so they were
down my house. And when he was 3 years old, they lived down there.
okay, so let's see if we can add that.
I hope it's long enough
I hope so too. And we'll make sure that we document that as well. And I'd like Linda to stand up. This is Linda Partridge, and Linda has been extremely instrumental in taking over the information from Nancy Edwards. Nancy, when you get a chance, you'll see what we call butcher paper. And Nancy started doing the Rowley genealogy literally on butcher paper. And when we had the Rowley reunions, she would be there in time to wherever we had it, many, many years at Highland Forest. And she would just tape that butcher paper all the way around and unroll it until finally she said, someone else has got to start taking this over. And Linda and her husband stepped up to the plate, and their family, and they have not stopped having a Rowley reunion. What year is this one?
97.
This is the 97th Rowley reunion. And Linda has managed to somehow, in her spare time, pull together volumes of books that you are welcome to look at when you step up here. And she has done a pictorial portion as well as the history part. So anything that we can give her tonight to add on is going to be very helpful. So we encourage you to spend time sharing and talking and adding or deleting if we've made some mistakes. But Nancy Edwards has been the root of beginning the genealogy for all of the Rowley family and has carried it through until Linda, fortunately, has picked it back up, and we continue to put as many of the Rowleys together as we can. Sometimes you'll see it tonight at the reunion. Sometimes you'll see, most of the time you see Dick Woodford, and Dick likes to eat, so he usually is always there. So we're very careful. I try to get there and eat. And we try to be very careful about speaking to a negative connotation about anyone, because we're related just about to everybody in this room. It gets a little scary sometimes. So the canning factory, our mother worked there, and I know that one time, I never got into the canning factory, but I know that one time Harvey did. And Grandpa took you in there.
You finish up and I'll comment.
Okay. And so he's going to comment on that. And that was an amazing business for this village. So we have a lot of history, and we're grateful for that. So we're thankful for anything that you can share or add to us.
So in the 60s, the Ron Hathaway family lived at the Rowley Farm on the dancing rings.
Everybody hear me? Close enough. I have a couple quick stories connected to the town. Too close. Working with my dad all those years, he gave me a lot of thoughts along the way about the early years in this town. This town was quite a bustling town in the early 20s, or up to 1925. We had the canning factory, we had ordnance cheese plant, we had manufacturing, we had ginseng in the back where the school is, where all those ball fields are, was full of ginseng. And my parents always talked about all that stuff. And my dad had a special memory connected to the canning factory. He grew up on working for Bernard Rowley up on Rowley Road as a teenager. And then Mr. Rowley, Bernard Rowley, was the supervisor of the town, and one day he went with him in the car. And they pulled down here to Mill Street and got out the car and started talking to some of the workers. And my dad said they were running a water line from the swamp behind King Carroll's apartment to the canning factory. And it was wooden pipe, dug by hand. And Bernard told this to my dad. My dad was with him when that happened, and he shared that memory. I thought that was pretty ironic that back then there were not any backhoes and wooden pipe. I'm not sure what was a framed wooden pipe or something they put holes in. It was pretty interesting. The other quick memory that I have as a teenager, I worked down at the cemetery with my grandpa on my mother's side, who lived in the house next to the post office where Chrissy Peck lives now. And as I went down there as a teenager, on the way to the cemetery, we stopped at the canning factory. And I remember going in the building that I didn't see in the picture. It was about 75 foot long, and inside were 3 school buses stored, about half the size of what we have now. But also inside were boxes of cans and labels, and I remember seeing those. And my grandfather took a box down one day, and I couldn't believe the amount of labels and the amount of cans that were in that building. That building was parallel to Genie Settlement Road, but I didn't see it in the picture. So I don't know if I had any connections with the canning factory now. That really happened because on the way to the cemetery, he would stop there, and I actually went in the canning factory at one time in my early teenage years. My dad even said they had enough going on in this town between the canning factory, the milk factory, and manufacturing. They were talking about running a rail line from Dewey Station to Casanova, but they didn't know how to get across Delphi Gulf. And I remember him telling me that. So those are my interesting stories.
Thank you, Howard. That's it? Okay, well hang around, look at stuff, and we're going to get busy and get the refreshments out.